On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what storylines will define the Thunder season?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and inside the Thunder beat writer, Thunder on SI beat writer Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO ThunderPod. Email the show, lothunderpod@gmail.com. On today's show, we're going to talk about the storylines that will define this Thunder season. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You can start this season with a big return at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your show from. This is going to be a very fun season. I'm very thankful for the growth that this show has had, and we have a lot of fun stuff coming up this season. What will be the most exciting season since covering this team on this show. So it'll be a lot of fun. I hope you stick around. Still have a bit of the allergy, so the voice might sound and does sound really strange, but we're powering through because the show must go on. When you look at this Thunder season, they're the odds-on favorite to win the West. They're a popular pick to go to the NBA Finals, to win the team's first NBA championship. They won 57 games a year ago and were, by all accounts, absolute contenders. What will define this season? I think that there are 5 strong storylines which will heavily impact this season and ultimately decide whether the Thunder do or do not take the next step. And the first storyline is simple. Is J-Dub and Chet, are they ready to take that next step? Now, this is not a storyline or question mark that at all condemns them. If it's not their time, you can go back in NBA history and look at all the bona fide champions, all the bona fide stars, how many of them broke through in their second ever postseason run. That's a very short list. But for as much as we can talk about the bench and how talented and deep this rotation is, for as much as we can talk about Shea and how excellent that he is, and he's carved out his lane as a top 5 player in this league. He finished runner-up for MVP, 2 straight top 5 finishes for MVP. We think that this team absolutely has a championship-level coach and the best coach in franchise history. And for all the assets they have in the future, and for all that you can give the accolades to Sam Presti, as far as this season goes, the difference in this team reaching that lofty goal of winning a championship, which only one team does every year and is incredibly hard to do, squarely falls on the shoulders of Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams. I think Isaiah Hartenstein and I think that Alex Caruso are massive additions, and they help you get over the hump. But you can't even begin to climb the mountain to get over the hump unless you have a second and third option. And last year in the playoffs, you didn't have that second and third scoring option, and it left you just shy. Now, that's not to say that a bad postseason. I think that both these guys played really well in the playoffs for their first ever go at it. Chet and J-Dub specifically were excellent defensively. I mean, what J-Dub did to Kyrie Irving gets undersold a little bit due to his shortcomings offensively. But defensively, they both were there throughout the postseason. And even for, like, as much as you want to talk about how J-Dub was short and not there offensively for the Thunder in the postseason last year, if the Thunder don't lose the non-Chet minutes by 20 points, in a series with a 0-point differential, they likely win that series. Like if it wasn't just so bad when Chet wasn't on the floor, they're likely going to get past Dallas and in their first ever run, go to the Western Conference Finals. So I think that when you look at these two guys, it feels like a ton of pressure, and it is a ton of pressure to put on 2 second year in terms of playoff experience guys. But that's life in the NBA. And I think that for them, when will they take that next step, or how does that next step come? They're going to have a dominating regular season. And it's not to say that the regular season does not matter, but they're going to be defined by what they do in the postseason. Here's what to look for in the regular season and what we've already started to see in the preseason. You want to see Chet and J-Dub become more assertive and become more of, hey, I am that guy. Like I am the second option, the third option on this team. Like it's Shea and then it's us. And then you utilize the rest of the roster, which is a very deep and talented roster. But I would point you back to, Shea's second and third year in Oklahoma City on teams that were far less talented than this one. And even he was caught at times deferring and caught at times where you left games whenever they were winning 20 games in a season, you left games saying, I wish that Shea would have shot the ball more. It takes time for that to come into effect of, yeah, man, you're allowed to take good shots and not try to work for a great one from somebody else. That's the thing you earn as a top player on this team. And so these two guys in the preseason, I think, have shown you a difference in their mentality of how hard they're attacking the basket. For J-Dub, it's about his three-point volume, where you're seeing him take threes that a year ago he would have passed up because they weren't the absolute ideal perfect open three. And those things are very encouraging. And those are the things you want to see continue in the regular season. And then, of course, in the postseason as well. But for all we're going to talk this year about this rotation and how deep it is, none of it matters unless these two guys are ready to go to that next level in the playoffs. And given what they showed in their first playoff run, it's a solid bet that they will do that in their second playoff run, that they will be able to take what they did well and learn from what they didn't do well and implement it into year two. But by the same token, if they're not quite ready yet, while it does define this season, it doesn't define them as players. Because as we said at the top of the show, you'll be very hard-pressed to find stars who didn't have to bash their head against the wall a couple seasons and a couple postseason runs before breaking through. And some guys never break through, but I think that these two guys are. I think that these two guys are going to break through. And so that's what the Thunder are gambling on, is that you've set up this team that, at least for the next 2 or 3 years, will be the deepest team in basketball. They will have all of the complementary pieces necessary to go win a championship and all the tools necessary to go win a championship. But to win a championship, you need J-Dub and Chet to be the second and third scoring option and help alleviate some of that scoring output in the waning minutes of the postseason. And if you were going to bet on somebody to have that outcome, I think that you would bet on these two guys. But that's the first and foremost storyline that'll define this season. Because if they are ready, well, then you can just skyrocket to the top. If they're not ready, then this season will be one that, like, you just will get to the Western Conference Finals, and then you'll kind of struggle a little bit, or to the second round even, because of how tough the West is. But in terms of, if you're trying to win a championship, which this team is, this team is talented enough to win a championship, that's the mentality, that's the mindset heading into the year. It's gonna take that growth from J-Dub and Chet. But it's not fully on them. I think that this team is so deep that there's a billion storylines to follow, and we'll talk about those coming up. But first, want to say right now, but our good friends over at FanDuel, check out FanDuel today. Folks, FanDuel's great. Yes, the NFL season is in full swing. Basketball season is starting, though, with a big return from FanDuel. America's #1 sports book. So whether you're in the middle of the game for live lines or you want to bet on the spread, player props, over-unders, you want to do that at FanDuel because they're great. And it's a great place to place your bet. And when you do, when you place your first $5 bet, you will get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose, $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel. If you want to jump on a very fun line, go to FanDuel.com right now. Check out opening night where the Thunder are 2.5-point underdogs against Denver. I think that that's a great bet. You can go check it out at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. So we've talked about the first storyline. Can the Rising Stars take that next level to all-star status, to the number 2, number 3 option status? I think that they can. I think that they will. Like not to spoil next week's season preview, but I think that they will. I think that they will be ready. But that is the thing that will linger this entire time. Number 2, is this defense as good or better than advertised? And the early returns of the preseason, albeit we've only seen 2 games where they've had their full complement of players, but man, the way that they can deflect passes, the way that they can get steals, blocks, deterrence. They were a top 5 offense and top 5 defense last year, and they added 2 of the best defenders by every advanced metric in Caruso and Hartenstein. Obviously, Caruso is a 2-time all-defensive member. And Hartenstein is underrated a bit because you have to do some digging, right? Like Caruso, his defense pops off the page of like he has the accolades. For Hartenstein playing in that bench role, and he stepped in for New York, of course, due to injuries last year at the end of the year. But for him, you've got to really dig into the advanced metrics to see just how valuable he is, unless you're watching him nightly, which soon Thunder fans will be. He's an excellent defender. Individually, top to bottom, there's not a bad defender in the bunch. And they're all very versatile. And the Thunder, they can kill you with size. They can kill you with a harassing perimeter defense. Like they can do whatever they want to, versatily, defensively. And when you're talking about, the playoffs and offense and how you're going to help Shea carry the load offensively in the playoffs. And I know the playoffs are more of a half-court game, but a way to do that is by playing elite defense and turning defense into offense. So I think that this team, for one, now that you can cover the game in 48 minutes of rim protection, as long as you stagger the rotation the right way, like you can always have a rim protector on the floor. That'll be a massive help. And then you can just match any lineup possible. Any lineup possible you can match. That gives the Thunder a huge leg up. Like this team could be a historic defensive team. Like they could break steal records. They could for sure break deflection records, if that's even such a thing, which it is nowadays with how we keep track of metrics. But it's weird because this team can be built on the back of defense while also having a superstar scorer who just walks into 30 points a night, and the scoring leap that I expect and most of us expect Jada and Chet to make. Plus, these aren't just defensive exclusive players, right? Like these aren't just guys who can lock you down on one end and aren't really productive on the other end. Caruso shoots 40% from 3. Hartenstein is electric offensively in a multitude of ways, of his push shot to the way that he can run DHOs and set screens and free guys up. Like his playmaking, of course, as a passer. Like all these guys who you look at and say they're elite defensively also do elite level things offensively and complement each other so well. And you can really play complementary basketball. But if this defense is what we think it will be, good luck scoring. And I would say that what plays into the Thunder's favor is their length and their ability to play the passing lanes. Now, maybe it doesn't end in steals every single time in the postseason, but in a half-court game, where you're milking the shot clock a little bit, one or two deflections, even if it's not necessarily a steal, it creates a possession where you're rushing a shot at the end of the shot clock, and it's a bad look just by the act of getting the deflection. And now you have the rebounders to go clean it up whenever you force a bad shot and force a bad look. So this defense can really, if it's as good as advertised or somehow better, this defense can carry you to a ton of wins in both formats, regular season and postseason. For the regular season, I think that this team can win a ton of games just because not only will this defense translate night to night, but this is a team that won't take nights off. And you can't say that about a ton of teams. You cannot say that about really any team hardly in the NBA, that their guys will play every single night and their guys are good and their guys care defensively. They're not just going to try to bomb threes in the sense of, hey, if it's our night shooting the ball and the shots go in, great. If not, we're out here in name only. We're going to pack it up if these shots aren't falling. Their intensity and focus first will be to discombobulate you on the defensive end and then translate that into offense. So I think that this defense is a massive storyline. Another massive storyline is how to utilize Isaiah Hartenstein, because he can do so much and he can impact the game in so many ways that you've got to figure out how to best harness it. So through 2 preseason games with the rotational players, the Thunder have had 1 game where they started Caruso along with the core 4 of Chet, J-Dub, Shea, and Dort. And they've had 1 game where they start Isaiah Hartenstein with Chet, J-Dub, Dort, and Shea. So we don't know who's going to get the starting draw night in and night out. We don't know if it'll be a situation where it's matchup dependent or how often they're going to tweak things. But you do have to figure out how you're going to balance playing 2 bigs, how you're going to balance, playing Hartenstein off the bench, what lineups are going to look like. Because with Hartenstein, there is no wrong answer, which gives you a billion different formulas that you can plug him into. Like, it feels like every math formula has the letter X in it. He's the letter X. Because what does he do for your secondary unit? Well, obviously, he fixes a massive problem that you had a year ago where you couldn't protect the rim. But more so than that, what's going to help J-Dub take the next step as a scorer? Oh, I don't know. Playing off of a guy who can create 3 feet of separation with a screen and free J-Dub up to just stroke it in the mid-range where he's so elite and get downhill to the rim. Yeah, that's going to help a lot. We've talked all off season. We talked all postseason. We'll talk about it on this show too. Spoiler alert about needing a secondary creator to help alleviate some of that pressure off of J-Dub as a scorer and put him in more advantageous spots to score whenever Shea's not on the floor and set him up. Well, who can do that as a high post playmaking hub? Oh yeah, Isaiah Hartenstein. So as much as you can fall in love with the idea of running double bigs and getting to zag from what you're used to, and using that advantage of now you go from a team that was so undersized a year ago to one of the most functionally big teams in the NBA. I would go as far to say the most functionally big team in the NBA. But how much do you want to lean into that size and double bigs versus all the benefits you get from Hartenstein being really a backup center? And I think that what we'll see is much like that Houston game where Caruso starts, but man, they wove in and out of that double big lineup, pretty boom, boom, boom style. Like 1 minute the double bigs are in, 1 minute it's just Hartenstein, 1 minute it's just Chet. Now they're both on the floor. Now it's just Hartenstein. Now they're both on the floor. Now it's just Chet. Like the constant changing of that against Houston, I think will end up being one of the best ways to deploy him. But the steps it takes to figure that out fully and how long that process takes and what that looks like in the playoffs, that will be a massive storyline of what defines this Thunder season. So I think that Hartenstein in general will just be one of the biggest things to talk about the entire year and the entire postseason. And the thing that I would say you should take most solace in is that the Thunder operate independent of conventional wisdom, independent of groupthink. I still look in the comment section. I still look on social media, and there's this narrative that the Thunder couldn't possibly bring Hartenstein off the bench because he's getting paid $30 million. I promise you, regardless of if he starts or not, the price tag will not factor into that decision. Whatever they think is best to win basketball games, that'll be the only factor. Now, other teams, sure. Other teams and owners for sure would only want their $30 million a night, a day guy, a year guy starting, but that's not how the Thunder are going to operate. So if they find it's best to bring him off the bench, they're going to do that. And I don't really think that we'll have a clear answer on who's going to start for about a month, probably. I mean, I look at opening night, and regardless of what you think the shell starting five will be, it's very enticing to start Hartenstein opening night, because when that Nuggets team is healthy, you're going to have a front court of Porter Jr., Gordon, and Jokic. You want to match that with J-Dub, Chet, and Hartenstein. Like, that's what you want to do. But that's not to say that's what you want to do against Chicago, especially not against Atlanta. So I think within the first 3 games of the season, you're going to see at least 2 different starting fives. So I just think that utilizing Isaiah Hartenstein and how you utilize him will be what defines this season of how you come to terms with whatever is best in that aspect. Coming up, there are 2 massive storylines still left to talk about. Go check them out today, because HIMS is there for you at hims.com/locked-on. HIMS, guys, sometimes intimate moments can happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. HIMS provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you the boost of confidence so you can be ready when the mood strikes. Your sex life is important and your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through HIMS, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. Start your free trial today at hims.com/locked-on. That's HIMS.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/locked-on. The product mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness for the FDA. Prescriptions required, an online consult with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. We're talking the 5 storylines that will define this Thunder season. At number 4, have they really upped their three-point volume? This has been something that Mark has harped on all training camp long, and to their credit, through the preseason, they've done this. They've shot more threes, especially from Wiggins, J-Dub, and Shea. You've seen them take more three-point shots. J-Dub has looked very good at taking shots that a year ago I feel like he would have passed up on an attempt to work for a better shot. For Shea, his shot physically is different. It is quicker. It is smoother. Like, he looks really good shooting the ball as well. But this team a year ago was the best team in terms of three-point percentage, but the 16th team in terms of three-point attempts. Even if you sacrifice some of that percentage efficiency for higher volume and you gain more points on the back end because of it, I think that you would absolutely take that trade-off. And if that trade-off happens for an already top 5 offense, man, I mean, this could be a jaw-dropping offense with what is already expected to be an elite level defense. And then the number 5 storyline. Someone has to step up as a table setter. Well, this offseason, I think, has been perfect for Sam Presti. I don't think you could have designed a better offseason, a better summer. But the only question from a year ago that does not have an immediate answer is who will be that table setter whenever Shai's off the floor. Now, the Thunder haven't ignored this problem. They've given themselves plenty of shots. Cason Wallace tapping into that point guard background. Jalen Williams taking a step as a playmaking guard. AJ Mitchell as a rookie has looked very impressive so far. Isaiah Hartenstein as a high post playmaking hub. Like, they've given themselves plenty of shots. Chet will have the ball in his hands more, which has been something that Sam Presti highlighted even after the Josh Giddey trade before getting Hartenstein. So they've given themselves opportunity to correct this shortcoming from a year ago, but it's not as black and white as the other issues from this season. So who steps up to take that mantle? Who steps up to fill that role? And how quickly can they find a solution to that hole in their roster a year ago? Goes a long way in defining how good this team can be. I think that there's a real chance it could be AJ Mitchell when it's all said and done. But as we talked about with Brandon Rabar yesterday, I wouldn't just jump the shark and think like Saturday when the rosters go finalized that you see an AJ Mitchell contract conversion. The Thunder do have an open roster spot, but you want to keep that open for flexibility's sake through the deadline, through the buyout market, especially whenever you have 50 games to play with for that two-way contract. So, it could be AJ, it could be Cason, could be Caruso, who's shown an ability to be a backup point guard in his past. Again, I'm not gonna count out a playmaking jump from J-Dub, especially being able to work with the best screen setter he's ever had in the NBA. And I feel confident to say the best screen setter he's probably ever played with in Isaiah Hartenstein. But figuring out who's actually going to take up that mantle will be a task that the Thunder have to figure out. So for as much as I believe this team will have wire-to-wire success in the regular season and will largely be defined by their postseason, along the way in the regular season, there are still a ton of storylines, a ton of reasons to pay attention to this team. And you guys are out in full force listening to this show, consuming Thunder content. I cannot thank you enough for that. Subscribe to Locked On Thunder anywhere you get your podcast from. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.